All right, everybody, welcome back to Mix Nomad Podcast. I'm the host, Sean Lowry. You got Ricky here with us once again. We are on episode 13. Look at that. Lucky, we're going to call this lucky number 13. How's that sound?
Yes. And so this one, we're going to kind of just go through some stuff to work it out together. So I expect many people on this one, especially if you do lean left, to go, what the ever fucking fuck, dude. I expect that on this one, because this is one of the ones where it just has to be worked through to understand a solution that like makes it so that we can move forward. And so We're going to get into the ever controversial white privilege.
Right. Yeah, we were talking offline before this, and trying. We started to get it. Just like everything else, we start to get into the minutia of it all, and then we start to talk about it, and then we kind of debate our points before we're even online, and then we got nothing to talk about. So I'm like, no, we got to just get this one rolling, and just kind of go. So also, I want to say that this is the first episode. Rick is now in his official studio and outside of the home, so he's got this cooking this time. But we might have a few technical issues on this one with. I notice his sound's a little funny right now, but we'll just bear with us. We're working on it. We're also working on a new intro that I must also want to add that Rick helped animate and put together. So I haven't even seen it yet because we're doing a whole new intro style for this one. So we're going to see if it works. So hopefully it does. It doesn't turn into a bunch of garbage. Otherwise we'll do something like a little more old school. But I don't know. We're figuring it out. We're making it happen. And also, let me say, like and subscribe. Hit the little bell thing, notifications, so that way you know that we're posting videos. Make sure you comment and give general feedback, so we know if this content is good for you, or if you have some kind of question or something that you would like us to discuss, something you would like us to debate. We would love to hear from you. And also, on a little side note here, next week, we're actually going to have another guest on the podcast that we're going to try to rope into this. And we like I said, we have a lot of stuff coming, so stay tuned, and hopefully this will just keep getting better. All right, so with all of that, all of the minutia and the details out of the way, we can go ahead and get into this conversation. So we were talking, we were like, well, what are we going to discuss in this episode? And we're like, okay, well, we're tossing over different ideas, things that have taken place, things that are happening. And we came across, it kind of all seemed to lead back to the white privilege conversation, right? So with white privilege, I feel like, and this is my take on it, I feel that we get there's a lot of misconception about what that means and who it's for. And I may have said this before, but I want to just clarify that in like how I perceive white privilege. And I think what the general take on it is that just because you're white doesn't mean that you have an advantage. It doesn't mean that doesn't mean that you can't be poor. It doesn't mean that things bad can't happen to you. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden everything is just handed to you and everything is yay and perfect. I mean, I think I did talk about this before, where I said the Dave Chappelle skit where he was like on the subway, and it was like as soon as everybody of color got off the subway, like the disco ball dropped down on the subway and they started handing out champagne and like, all the people of color are gone. So now everything's fucking perfect. This is whitey white land, and that's not it. It like nobody, I mean, obviously bad things happen to everybody, to human beings on a whole. But my take on the whole thing is it's not that you gain something because you're white. It just means that you don't have a negative, there's nothing negative that comes with being white. When throughout the history of this country, it has been negative just being black. But this isn't even just stuck to black people. You know what I mean? This is pertained to basically everybody but white people. You know what I mean? There's been a time with this country where it was where if you were Asian, it was bad for you. If you were Hispanic, it's bad for you. If you're Arabic, it's been really bad for you. I mean, look at the whole stretch of the 2000s. You know what I mean? Basically, if you were Arabic in any kind of way, you were, there was a problem for you. And the only people, so that's what, but it's only just white people that just because they're white have not been disadvantaged because of that. That is what the white privilege is. And that's the thing that I think that people have a hard time grasping with the whole thing. So yeah, that's just kind of where my take on the whole thing is. What about you, Rick? What do you think?
Just on the things that you said there, to say like there was just no disadvantages to being white, like there's none. Like,
no. Wait, hang on a minute. Let me say that. Let me clarify that one real quick. It's not that there's no disadvantage. Like it's not that. It just means that you're not disadvantaged because you're white. It has nothing to do. It's not saying that there's no disadvantages. It just means that you are not disadvantaged specifically because you're white. Okay. You have plenty of disadvantages, just like everybody does, the same normal ones. But being white is not one of them.
Well, there are both ways. And I think the difference is because of the way that society has gone at the moment, there's just no sympathy for anybody who does have a problem with being white. And what I mean by that, there's white guilt right now. So like if you're white and you should feel a certain way, and if you don't, then you're a piece of shit. And so they're like, okay, well, I have to feel bad for these things because, ancestors did shit that's not fucking cool. I need to say sorry. There's people who are shamed right now for being white. There's no white unity. And so you don't see the same thing where, I'll give you an example, even female unity is higher than white male unity. If you're just like you said, on a train and you got mixed people and you see a white guy and a black guy arguing and the white guy drops the N-word, you'll see 5 black guys get up and get involved. But if the black guy starts saying a bunch of racial slurs to the white guy, everyone's going to be like, oh, these two are really getting into it. Like no one's going to get involved. There's no unity there. And so there are disadvantages as far as, it's not like just being white means you win. And there is, as far as the advantages go, I think it'd be more helpful to understand, like, all right, let's be clear on the advantages versus the disadvantages. That if you're black, you have this disadvantage, and if you're white, you have this advantage, to be a little more clear. But then the other part that I would go into next after you do that is I think the word privilege is probably the more combative part to it. And I think it's probably just mislabeled to be almost kind of like you should feel bad for it or you're better than. And I think that's where it creates more separation and not any type of closure that can be had for it.
Okay, so yes, I do agree with the fact that the term is combative. Let me start with that. 2, let me also say that that I don't feel that white guilt should be a thing. You know what I mean? Like for example, you were never a slave owner, so I don't feel that you should be guilty. And I also don't think that white people should feel guilty for being white. Like that they should not feel guilty for things. And I also don't think that they should feel guilty for a system that they did not create. Like, I think that's important to say. And when I say they didn't create it, like you take yourself, Rick, right? You didn't make Jim Crow laws. You didn't do slavery. You are anti all of those things. You are anti all of the things that came with the Jim Crow laws. You are anti all of the slavery things. You are against these things. So should you feel guilty about those things? No. Should you, but being once again, we talked about this too, being aware is different than feeling guilt. And I think that's the component is I think that feeling guilty about it is something that, in my opinion, that white people have kind of, subjected to themselves. You know what I mean? Like they've put it on themselves, that this guilt portion, and
it opens people up to be able to take advantage of that. And you've seen that too.
Well, yeah. I certainly have. I've seen things that I don't agree with that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel that white people need to get down on their knees. I don't think I think those are blind gestures that don't really help anybody. They solve nothing. You know what I mean? Other than, and I don't feel that asking somebody to debase themselves is the right solution to try to get anything done. That's not the where, but that's not the way through. But at the same time, I think that, like I think the pendulum is it's swinging really hard in both directions. It's either not my fault, not my problem, I didn't do it, I'm not with it, so fuck off. Or it's, I'm so sorry, and let me debase myself. You know what I mean? I think the pendulum is swinging so hard in both directions that it creates nothing. But why can't we have acknowledgement and then in acceptance, once again, acceptance of what took place. And when you have that, when you have the acknowledgement of it, then you can actually do something about it. Like awareness of it is always going to be that beginning piece. And I think that a lot of people, even though you didn't create it, white people didn't create it, or that are currently around today, didn't own slaves, they're not advocating for Jim Crow. You know what I mean? Obviously there's wackos in every group, and we're not even going to, whatever, they can bite it. That's not who we're trying to reach here. But right. By taking the simple fact of saying, all right, well, yes, there was something there, then we can actually like do something about it. You and I don't think that's
where you have to start defining the differences. And
right.
This is where I think I need your help on this. Like, let's define like what white privilege is. And this is probably where we'll see the most comments start filling up. Let's define like, all right, so this is the white privilege. I know that you hear people say like, if it's it seems like a black name on a resume versus a white name, like, which isn't in always, but there are people that do that. And there are preconceptions and there are things. So let's like at least kind of try to narrow down like some of like it, like what are some of the things that they are considering the privileges.
Okay.
So we can be clear.
All right. Well, fair enough. All right. So let's something like that. So that is a very basic one. You have something like, you have just based on a name, right? If they have a name that is a typical person of color's name. And, you know, let me also say this is not a black white issue, because I've seen the same thing. I mean, you get it just as much if your name is Mohammed or if your name is
Zaiching.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you're like whatever, like whether it's a hardcore Hindi name or if it's an Arabic name and once again, each one of these groups are going to get a judgment cast, but you're not going to get that judgment cast on a resume if your name is Bill or Jennifer. You're just not. I mean, like, and I've seen this. I've worked in retail. I've worked in the corporate world. I've worked in all of these environments, and I've seen it firsthand that these things based off of the name, I've seen business owners or managers pass around like resume. Oh, look at this name. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. And then who do they call? They call for an interview, they call the Bills, the Bryans, the Jennifers, the Michelles, the Jamies, the Jennies, the Chris's, you know what I mean? Those are the people who get the phone calls. So that right there, and is that inherently, that this person is white? No, but it is assumed, and it's just based off of a name. And it's just assumed that this person, and it's not even like, I don't even think that it's one of those things that's like, in most cases, I don't think that it's somebody going like, oh, we want to hire a white person, not a black person. I just think that the name is very off-putting on a subconscious level for some reason, when it's not a Bill, Brian, Jenny, Michelle, Chris, whatever.
Well, in that case, the way that you mentioned with people passing around resumes and laughing about it, I don't think that one's subconscious. That seemed very conscious.
Well,
yeah, that it was deliberate. So
right.
I don't know if that one was subconscious.
Right.
Okay, so resumes and names, that's one.
Right. Okay. So we got that one. Now we have other things. Let's take other, let's take something and let's go away from the black and white thing. Let's go into the simple thing. If your name is, or not even name, let's go into, a look. And it's a big, and people are really they're probably gonna bag on me this one, but only because you're on here do I feel that I can get away with this one. But the actual assumption, right, is that, I've heard girls say this 100 times, right? Like, oh, if we're out somewhere and like, oh, there's an Asian guy. I'm not interested in that. Why? Oh, because they have small
penises.
Yeah, right. You know what I mean? Like, and that is something I have actively heard. And it's just assumed, and you know what? Those condentations, but it also goes, and obviously it's one of those things that goes more in the positive swing when it comes to black guys, right? But where is there no judgment cast at all? If it's just if it's just a white guy, there's no preconceived.
Well, I don't know about
no. White guys are just there is no major preconceived that they're just average, just run of the mill. There's no, oh, it's a white guy, he's got a small one. There's an Asian guy, he's got a small one. There's a black guy, he's got a huge one. Well, let me tell you something. I've been in a lot of locker rooms. That is not the case all the way around. Like, it doesn't happen. You know what I mean? That's all. But the point is that it's just it's the only one that doesn't have any, whether it's negative or positive, it's just nothing. That is the privilege. There's just nothing. And that's what I'm really trying to stress
I think I would kind of argue like that's black privilege on that one.
Okay.
I don't know about that one. That sounds like black privilege.
Okay, but once again, it's still the whole thing.
Listen, if you had girls talking like, this guy's got a really big one and this guy is blah. I don't think blah sounds that great. I'm just saying. Well, it doesn't sound like white privilege.
Okay, but the point goes back to the fact that there is the privilege is that there is nothing that comes along with just being white. There's nothing. It's considered standard in every
we'll keep
aspect.
This one on the list, but I think this one's a stretch on this one because this sounds more like getting into like male privilege stuff, like the male objectivity of it, because it's a little different than a race thing on this one. Because the pressures and societal pressures on guys to have a big one or a small one is just a male issue in general, and so
no. This one is a direct racial thing. How can we not look? Whether it's objectifying is irrelevant. This is a direct.
This one under black privilege. This one's black privilege. This one makes black people look awesome.
You're missing. See, this is what I'm talking. You're completely missing the point. You're missing the point of the fact that how there is. It's just the absolute neutrality. But you know what? You say that's black privilege. What about the black guy who doesn't have a huge dick? What about him? Mm-hmm. Because now all of a sudden it's like, well, now it's just assumed. And what if he doesn't? Now all of a sudden, now what? And what we don't like all black guys are like fucking magical mandingos? Like what? Like really? What is that? Like it is an absolute privilege to walk into any situation and not have a preconceived notion. That is the privilege. There's no preconceived notion.
That no one thinks about your pee-pee.
See, you're going off into you're arguing the semantics rather than the issue.
I just repeated what you said. No one thinks about white people pee-pees. You said no, it's neutral. No one's thinking about yours. Black guy walks in.
Nobody has a preconceived notion. If it could be great, it could be terrible. But nobody preconceives something about you just because you're white.
Just hopeful.
Sure.
I just hope this one's a good one.
Yeah, pretty much. There you go. But guess what? There's assumptions preconceived on the other sides. And how do you don't see that you don't think that is You don't see that as being a privilege when you mark that with the other. Let's take that with the first one, with the name thing.
We'll leave that one in there, but this one's on like the edge of it for me. All right, what else you got?
See, that's just.
Oh no, just because I'm not picking a side or agreeing with you completely is fine.
Okay,
what else you got?
Yeah. Okay, well let's take the simple fact of same kind of thing. You see a group of four guys walking down the street. Let's say you're a female and you're whatever, right? Or even not even a female, just a dude by yourself. The average dude walking down the street, and you see a group of 4 black guys walking your way. The preconceived notion is, oh shit. Now, just because they're black, for no other reason. This goes over into police officers. This goes into everything. Like, oh shit, it's just going to be a problem. While if it's a group of white guys, you don't get that feeling. If it's a group of Asian guys, like, oh, well, if it's a group of Indian guys, you're like, huh, well, they're a bunch of punks. You know what I mean? Like it goes negative in some ways. It goes positive in some ways. Oh, well, they're absolutely no threat. They're 100% probably going to be a threat. And once again, with the white guys, it's just nothing. That is the whole point. The whole point of the white privilege. And I mean, there's all these examples where like everybody else walking into this situation has a preconceived notion about who they are because they are of their color. Except white people, it's always just a crapshoot. It doesn't mean that when the company is hiring a white guy that they're just like, well, he's white, he's gonna be great. It's nope. He's white. Let's see what happens. Oh, nope. He's going to be great in bed. Nope. He's white. Let's just see what happens. We hope it's awesome, but it might suck. But if it's a black guy, oh man, he's going to have a huge dick. If it's an Asian guy, oh, I know I'm in for a shit show now. It's going to be tiny. I guess I just have to deal. If they're walking down the street, oh, you know what? They're probably thugs. They're probably gangbangers. They're going to assault me. Oh, they're Indian. Oh, they're weak. Oh, they're nothing. They're not aggressive or of any kind of way. Oh, but if they're white, who knows? They might be good guys. They might be bad guys. Who knows?
Listen, I'm just gonna say it out here right now. You kind of glazing over the Korean one. If there's a group of 4 Koreans walking your way, you know there's going to be a dance-off. And I don't know if you're prepared. I don't know if you've got it ready, but they're damn good. They practice all the time.
Really?
They're amazing.
Yeah. See? There you go. See
what I did there? See what I did?
Yeah. But do you really see that this is what the real thing is? Like, we have to understand that is the essence of white privilege. It doesn't mean that things don't suck. It doesn't mean that everything is handed to you. It doesn't mean everything is going to be amazing in your life. It just means your color is going to have zero basis on what people preconceive about you. That is white privilege. And you and white people benefit. They are the only group in the United States that truly benefit from that neutrality. And that neutrality unto itself, even in some cases, like you say, with the junk thing, it still comes off. It's still a privilege. It's a privilege to not have a preconceived expectation of what you are.
All right. So I got seeing people in a group. Black people are scary, especially in a group of 4. I'm just going to put on the record, though, just so you know, if you're anybody walking by yourself and there's 4 dudes walking your way, you should always be worried. Like, it doesn't matter what color they are. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. If there's 4 of them and one of you, I mean, unless you're Jackie Chan or some shit, like, you don't know if they're going to turn on you or anything crazy. I'm just saying anybody. It doesn't have to be white or black. Anybody who does that is like, I got to be on alert if there's 4 dudes, period. I don't care if there's a Mexican, a white guy, a black guy, and a Chinese guy. You should be like, oh, man, there's 4 dudes here. I got to be aware. Like, that's anybody. I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying.
But by doing that, you're going, once again, you're rather than acknowledging that this is
safety, period.
But rather than acknowledging and looking at this and seeing what I'm talking about, you're going off into the weeds about the simple, and I'm not talking about that particular scenario that you were just talking about. I'm talking about the whole that you're like, okay, so we have resumes, we have the size of their junk, we have walking down the street. Okay, so but I mean, like, but it's not like it's like you're just glazing over the fact that like.
Oh no, I'm just not getting into it. I'm just not giving my opinions, and I'm not getting into it yet. First, I have to identify first. So that's all I'm doing right now. Just in case you're thinking I'm trying to solve things or take a side, I'm not doing that.
Okay.
I am making some jokes because some of it's a little silly.
Okay.
For like, we can make some jokes over stuff, but no, I want to identify first before I start going, I hate that, and people who do that are assholes. Like,
okay,
no,
well, but I mean, but that's okay. But I mean, like, but I mean, that is all of it. But I mean, you take those exact scenarios and just extrapolate them across all facets of existence. Extrapolate that over interactions with law enforcement. Extrapolate that over, and once again, and you look at all of these situations, and it is in some, for some groups it's extremely positive, and for some groups it's extremely negative. But you extrapolate that over into all things. People walking inside of a store, how you perceive a black woman to behave, you know what I mean? Like all of these things, or how you perceive a white woman to behave, or how you perceive let's go with the Japanese women trope, right? That they're all considered that they're going to be docile and subservient and obedient and all of these things. Once again, it's every other group has these preconceived cookie cutter packages that they are all placed in, except for white people. That's all I'm saying. That is all it is. That is what white privilege is. It is the privilege of not being prejudged based on race. Period. And apply that to everything.
Well, I mean, each person on here, like, is saying, if you're judging resume by, like, if they have a black name or a different race name, like any cultural name, seems like anything but what appears to be a white name.
Right.
The PPs thing, I'm gonna skip that for now. But people seeing a group of people, black people are going to be more dangerous. Law enforcement treats black people worse, and walking into the store, you're going to get more negative attention.
It's not treating them worse. It's just that all of a sudden they're going to be more alert, more cautious, more aggressive, more something. But all of these things, I just feel like that you're missing the point, that that none of those, all of those things don't really matter. That it's just the simple.
I'm not making any judgment or anything right now. I haven't said anything about anything. Right. Just is no missing the point. I just haven't said a point. I haven't gotten into it.
Okay.
I'm info gathering first. So I haven't said like, nope, there is no privilege. I haven't done any of that.
Okay.
I'm just going, what do we got first?
All right. Well, that is what we got. And those are all the examples. And once again, and you can apply those. I believe you can apply those exact same examples, those exact same rules to almost any situation in the United States. Like, really apply it to anything. And it works the same trope, no matter what you're dealing with. Every other group other than white has a preconceived notion. The white people, the privilege is that there is no preconceived notion. That's it. That's all you got.
I don't know. I'm going to kind of disagree with just that one point of saying like white people are just neutral across the board. That's like saying vanilla is not a flavor. Like, no, there's still preconceived notions because of white people, and it also goes off of how people carry themselves. We talked about that with like looking like Sons of Anarchy or looking like you're a businessman. Like, there's a preconceived notion of the way you look or carry yourself, period. That's all people. So it doesn't mean there's no preconceived notion. It's just going to be different. But it's the thing that I'm going with is it better or worse? And then what do you want, or how do we fix the thing? Because these all seem like people's personal views of that. So the resume thing is that person's personal view. It's not company policy that we don't hire people of ethnic names. That's that person who's hiring's preconception of this is what I think the problems are. With seeing a group of people, I would still argue be cautious if there's 4 people walking your way anyways. But if you say black people are scarier, that's based on people's misconception that something bad would happen. Now, there is also the facts of like sometimes walking past people like that, bad things happen, in which case it just perpetuates. So there's those things that we have to like not pretend like it's like no black person in a group of four has ever messed with anybody who's walked by them. Like, well, that's also not true. So then do we feed the fire or not? We can't make it like none of these stereotypes. Like these are all just based because like I hate black people. There are experiences people have. And so a lot of these things are just based on experience people have. And everybody's got different experiences. So to say across the board, this is how white people are and this is how black people are, it's really, a lot of these are perspectives, because I don't know if these are laws or these are the system that's created. Like we have to change this law because it says white people are allowed to get jobs and black people are not allowed to get jobs. Like there's no action that can be placed except for some people have an experience that makes them see one way more than another way. Or like I said, I don't know what companies it would be, but those people are hiring based on whatever experiences they've had through hiring. And I don't know how many years those people are doing it. And I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just saying that's usually the way people make their decisions is I've been through this. This is the pattern. This gives me better results than this. So I'm going to lean towards what's been working better. It may end up being like, well, if I can't pronounce their name, that's not going to work for me. You know, I don't know. I can't say what everybody who's ever hired's experiences are. So I'd have to go benefit of the doubt to go, okay, if people are doing this, what is the reason that this became like a thing? Is it only because black people don't deserve it because of their jobs? Is there work ethic things that they've run into? Has there been cultural differences that have created problems? Like there are questions that do have to come up. And that's where I would start with. I'd be like, well, let's maybe talk to some people who do that and then see what policies can be put in place to make that not a thing. But I think they tried doing that with affirmative action and things like this to say, you can't do that shit. Can't do it. And then it gets all jumbled up. So what's the balance in saying, what do we want? The resume one's a little tricky because the solution for that seems like, I don't know, black people have to change the stereotypes to saying if you hire a black person, that's just going to be the baddest ass worker you get. And the same thing with how Asians are or something. If you're in, or Jewish people in accounting, you know, like you're going to be like, there's a preconceived notion that if you hired this guy, they're going to be this the hardest worker you got. And if that's the case, and there's enough cultural things like that, then it starts going like, we're looking for the black names. Because that's what we know that they're just going to run circles. They're going to kick ass. And that turns into a cultural thing too. So if you want a certain thing, that turns into, well, we have to change our stereotypes then. You know, and then so what are the jokes? What are the stereotypes that you would know if you say a couple like black stereotypes that you would be like, this would be one of the things that we would be concerned with, just so we can put them on the table for anybody who's wondering, are these racist or not? Put them in a comment on what are some stereotypes. Like, are black people ever late?
Really? You're gonna say it with straight face for real?
Just saying. I'm just saying. Like, is that a thing? Because I lived with Sean, and I'm just telling you, we were late a lot.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of even black movies that talk about that one.
So like, I'm just, what are the stereotypes? You
like
know,
BPT, Black People Time. Like there are, and listen. But here's the thing. So we all know, and people really need to accept this for sure, that stereotypes, hate to break it to everybody, but there's some fucking truth to a lot of stereotypes. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason why jokes are made and things like that. But the point to all of this, in my opinion, and the solution is to be aware of it. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that the only solution with all of these things is benefit of the doubt, right? Is err on the benefit of the doubt side, right? So if you err on the side of like, all right, well, before, you know, like I get it. Like, so if you pull up to, if you're a police officer, let's go with that one, right? You're a police officer and you pull up and you pull over a car full of black guys, like instead of, you know, walk up and be like, assess the situation before you go balls out and start getting panicky. If a person is clearly there and they're like, here's my ID, and this goes along with that same thing. Like we talk about stereotypes, right? Like we know that the police have something in the neighborhood of 37 million interactions with Americans every year. I mean, like, it's some astronomical number. You know what I mean? And let's be realistic. How many police are killed every year in the line of duty by anybody? I mean, we're talking about it works everybody wants to use those statistics against like people of color, and they say things like, oh, well, we're not killing you. There was 9 last year, or I think it was 13 was last year. I think it was 9 the year before. Like unarmed black men or people, killed by police officers. And one year it was 13, 1 year it was 9, but it's never exceeded 15. Let's be square about it. It's never exceeded 15 any year, right? So out of 37 million interactions, and you have 15 fatalities, black people can't say police officers are hunting them. That is an untruth.
I agree.
But also, cops can't use the thing of they are 37% more likely to be assaulted by or to be killed in the line of duty by a black person, when the number of cops killed by black people last year was like 6. You know what I mean? Like, there are 37 million interactions. So I think it is fair to say, err on the side of give it the benefit of the doubt. And this goes on both sides of that equation, right? Like, rather than
with those numbers, are we sure we're at war? Because those don't seem like natural enemies.
No.
Like, I'm just saying, as far as like, if the numbers are 15 and 6 or something. Like,
yeah.
We're not talking, if it was like, it's 15 fatalities for police officers and there's 250,000 fatalities for black people from police officers, I'd be like, oh, there's clearly a war going on right now. And that number is going to get crazy. Like, sure, I'm with you, but I think, is that the enemy? Is that the enemy? And that's what I hate. I'm with you on that one, where those numbers don't justify the amount of insanity happening right now.
But it doesn't justify, but that's the whole point. It doesn't justify it on both sides, because just as much you can see a lot of interactions where clearly, I mean, I've seen a lot of footage. I've seen where the cop is clearly already geared up. They're already like, holy shit, motherfucker. Like, what the fuck? Like they're just amped up, because you can see all that nervous energy that they're already, their preconception is that it's going to be a thing. And the guy's like, whoa. My hands are right here. And guess what? And the fact is, and it comes down to, and there goes again, once again, there's the white privilege circling it all back, right?
Well, I would go back to what you just said, as far as experience to stereotypes are real. And again, we don't know the experiences that these people are having. If you got 37 million interactions, and even let's just make up a number. I'm going to make up a statistic. This is not a real statistic. Let's just make it up for just humanity's sake.
Okay.
Let's say every time you pull over black people, I've got a 60% chance they're going to be non-compliant because they think the police are their enemy. There's 40% that are smooth, no problem. We're good. Hey, just fix the tail light. Nobody has a problem here. Or yeah, you were speeding. I'll just see you in court. It's not a big deal. Like, sure, it goes smooth. But let's just say 60% is, I ain't doing nothing. I'm not giving you my ID. Leave me alone. You're just harassing me. Like, just being complicated and then being non-compliant. So then if your interactions are, man, almost every time here, I got a majority, they're going to give me shit every single time. And they're going to, or I pulled them over, and in this area, they usually will have drugs in the car, or be hiding something, or have illegal guns or something. Like, there's a stereotype that's going on for what we deal with, and it's a high risk job. If there is that stereotype, then you're going to be like, I'm on edge for that.
Okay, I want to chime in on that one, because that one's super important. If you are working, let's take, because I know my city, right? I know where I'm from. I know Detroit. If you're in Brightmoor here, which is a impoverished, primarily black community here in Detroit, right? On the west side here, and Like, I agree. You know what I mean? I agree. There is a much higher likelihood, and their perception of what they deal with is absolutely that. And I get it. I understand. I understand their level of caution. But we have to be real. Once again, in the state of Michigan, there are like 4 cities where shit is pretty sideways. There is zero reason for the officer in any of these suburbs to behave in this fashion. There's no reason. And this is every state everywhere. So we're talking about if all of these interactions, if they were only taking place in these small areas, I would completely agree with you. But this is why I say err on the side of benefit of the doubt. And it's the same thing.
This one, it seems like the solution is we are working for fairness. We want fairness and equality for the way we're treated. Everyone treated equally, right?
Well, of course. And it's not about having, there's not, and once again, you also use a thing that there's there's a hiring practice. Well, that's not the company policy. Well, of course that's not. What this is about being aware, trying to make people, that's what we keep talking about with white privilege, right? It's about being aware of the innate biases that you hold and trying to, and that is what separates us from animals, right? Of actually being able to look at a situation and go, am I doing this? Is this something, am I even subconsciously, am I making these choices because I'm letting the stereotypes take control of my choices? If they turn out to be shit, if things turn out to be wrong, well, fair enough. But if you err, and I mean, it's the same kind of thing. Like if I get pulled over by a police officer, right? Let's take that. If a cop comes over to me and he's like, "Hey man, what's going on?" He's like, "Yeah, you were speeding, you got your ID, you know what I'm saying?" He's just cool about it. You know what I mean? I'll be like, "Yeah, I was doing 7 over, here's my ID, here's my license, blah, blah, blah." And he comes back, whether he comes back with a ticket or not. If he comes back with a ticket, I'll be like, "Yeah, fair enough. That was on me." And most of the time the cop's being cool, he'll be like, because really it's just a money grab. So that's a different subject all the way around. But they're like, I wrote you up for an impeding. Your driving record's great. Here's your ticket. Just pay your $190, whatever the hell it is that they're writing up to get some money for the city. Whatever. Fair enough. I'm totally cool. However, if the cop comes over and he's a total fucking douchebag and he's an asshole right from the start, well, now I'm non-compliant. Fuck you. Because that's not what you're here to do. That's not how it's supposed to roll. So it's the same thing. If he comes up to a car filled with black guys and they're just like, once again, if me and you were driving and there was 2 other white dudes in the back seat, you were driving the car and a cop pulled you over, they wouldn't ask for my ID or the guys in the back seat. They wouldn't even do it. That wouldn't happen. They would never do that. Absolutely never pull the IDs.
You're saying that if I was in the car driving, they wouldn't ask for the black people's ID?
No. If we're all the white people, if there was a car filled with white people, they wouldn't ask for everybody unless they were teenagers or something like that. That maybe, but just for me, you, and 2 other grown white men, and you were speeding, a cop would not ask for everybody's ID. 1, they shouldn't because they can't. They're not supposed to. But 2, they know they would never do that. If 4 black guys are driving a car, they are 100% getting every person's ID in the car. They're going to demand everybody's ID in a car. This is the privilege. It's the privilege that it's just because it's just the assumption, well, we're just curious who's all in the car. We're trying to be safe. This is the privilege. That is what the privilege is. Those kind of things. If 4 black men our age are driving in a car, a cop is going to ask for every person's ID in the car. But if it was 4 white guys, they would never do it.
I would like to hear other people's opinions on this one because I haven't had enough pulled over with a car full of people experiences. I know that when I had black guys in the car, everybody's IDs were checked, including mine. And I can't really say I had groups of white people in the car getting pulled over. Like, so I don't know. Like, people would call that a privilege, but I don't drive super crazy or anything. So like, I can't really say like I'm a super speeder or nothing. I'm 38. I'm not trying to race anybody. I'm not fast and furious.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. These are people not being things that would be overlooked because you're just white. It's once again, it's no preconceived notion because you're white. That's all. That's what white privilege is. It's not that everything is butterflies and gummy bears for you, because your life can very much so suck.
Okay.
It just means you don't get prejudged based on it.
Okay. And this is where I would say, why do people prejudge? And then we want fairness and equality. So we need more accountability. So I'm looking at what are the solutions? Like, how do we solve this? And what needs to change, even like because I mean, like right now, it's not the law.
I know, right.
Pull over black people.
Right.
Like,
I think that is, and I think once again, I think that it is, and people always use this thing like, oh, they like to like throw it up like some kind of like drama thing. Like, oh, you want me to, about things that I'm subconsciously thinking, like it's not even like, like, no, it's about hearing these things and going like, is this happening? Questioning it in yourself. Because in here's what I also want to say is, I have been guilty of these things. So nobody can tell me that these things don't exist. I myself have been guilty of these things at different points in my life, in different situations. I have been guilty of it and been dead ass wrong most of the time when I had some of these preconceived notions. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have thought these thoughts and been like, yeah, I have done that. But, and let me just say this, because, and this isn't going to come off well, I'm like for sure, but I like
when you start with
the best thing to start with. Like, you take me back to 2000 and even younger than that. Because of my personal interactions, I had a huge problem with people of Arabic descent. A huge issue. I super did. Like, and they were based off of my experiences, but my experiences dealing with, rather than looking at being a teenager here in Michigan that has a huge Arabic population, rather than realizing that I was just dealing with teenagers and it didn't matter. They just happened to be Arabic. So my immediate thing was to call that out. And rather than just realize that I was just dealing with teenagers and teenagers are assholes, and I personally didn't have preconceived notions about white teenagers, but I had preconceived notions about Arabic teenagers, even based off, but they were still more than likely wrong. And my interactions were when people were drinking and so on and so forth and carrying on and being wilding out, being teenagers and early 20s. So you have these preconceived notions were just wrong because I didn't understand the people I was dealing with, or I was putting my own personal shit out of my head onto this group based on a fraction of sample. You know what I mean? So once again, I myself have been guilty of doing these things throughout my life, but it took conscious effort for me to unwind my programming, to realize this was something that I was doing and something it didn't add up. And as soon as I did that, as soon as I was able to unwind those pieces, I have been able to meet more incredible people in my life. It has enriched my life by getting rid of these preconceived notions, by judging each person. I've met some black dudes that people would be like, oh, that's a thug right there, 100%. And they were the softest, nicest human beings I have ever met. But on visual, if I had just gone off of how I perceived them right from the get, my life would have been less fulfilled with an absence of these people. So that's what this is about. The solution is to check your own shit, is to be able to look in your head and decipher what I'm saying and learn how to break that shit down, break your own shit down to something positive.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. So my crazy brain likes to go, let's really look at it then and find the solutions. And I almost feel like we could do an entire video on just this one thing. But let's maybe have some fun and break down the stereotypes. White people, black people, what are the stereotypes? Because if there are stereotypes, I know that if there was a stereotype that's against me and it works against me, there's just a cultural stereotype that white people do this shit, I would do everything that I could to be as differential, like from that. I want to be different than the stereotype to not be fucked with. That's what I would do personally. So I go in my own skin. If there is a natural stereotype, say white people punch old ladies, I would make it my point then to be extra nice to old ladies, just to try and go against the narrative of this terrible thing that white people do. Like that's what I try to say, what's in my control and what's not. So I mean, there are people who do this, and this is something that I watch a lot of videos where black people are saying we're breaking the stereotypes, we're breaking out of those things. I am going to do it in a better way, and I like that. I think that is good because they're stepping up and showing their character, they're showing their merit, they're showing like who I am, and I'm not what you think I am. I'm doing better than that because I'm actively trying to. I respect and love that about people when they do that. And like you said, your guy who looks like a thug, I can't wait till you meet Will. Will's straight thug. Wait till you see this dude when you meet him. And he's one of my best buds. But when you see him, this guy looks straight hood. And like him and I talk about the books that we read. We get into really deep conversations. We're dreamers. Like we get into some hard work stuff together. Like it's cool. But you're right. The first impression is going to be negative. And he has to work against that because his younger years, he tattooed his face and all kinds of stuff to fit a narrative that was hard, that was thug, that was gangsta. And now he's like, man, I had to outgrow that. And now I can't be that kid anymore. Now I got to be a man. I've got kids now. I've got a life. I've got dreams, and I got to be more respectful. So he does carry himself differently these days. And I think that's where we would make the effort. But I think that we have to identify some of these things. If there's a stereotype for people who hire black people, what are the stereotypes? If there's the stereotype, like you said, big old black dicks and then small or regular, who knows, white dicks, and then Asians have small dicks. What are the stereotypes? Seeing people in a group, what's the stereotype? Black people are going to rob me. White people are going to beat me up. Like, what's the stereotypes? Because I'm cool with identifying, like, all right, here's the things, and then what's in my control that I can go. If they say if I dress like the Sons of Anarchy, people are scared of me. But if I wear a tie, people are more welcoming.
Okay, I don't see benefit to that. And the reason being is because I don't see that. Once again, we do judge people. I get it, and you were very correct when you did bring that up before when we were talking that people do get judged based on how they're dressed. You know what I mean? So, and I get that. And I can understand the idea of that. If you see somebody walking at you, I'm not telling that everybody should just like all of a sudden that they should just be like, nope, everything's butterflies and gummy bears, because guess what? The guy who's dressing like a thug might be a thug. Like that is a real thing in this world. The guy who's dressing like the guy from Sunday, a guy walks in and he has fucking, kill mama on his knuckle rings, he might not be an awesome dude. But what I say is, like, being cautious is just a good, smart human trait. There's no like self-preservation is a real thing, and nobody is saying that you shouldn't do that and you shouldn't carry yourself like that. However, you should always, if you're, and once again, I'm saying this for something that I did for myself. If you check your bias, doesn't mean don't be aware of situations. It means, but if you allow yourself to be open to an alternate outcome, good things can come with it. Good things will come with it. If you allow yourself, and this is what I'm saying, like I understand that you are a person that obviously will look past the stereotypes and just judge it case by case. But what I'm saying is that on both sides, on white, on black, on Asian, on Hispanic, that is not the case. The average person is not doing that. They're not willing to realize or check the idea that they have personal bias. And I think the people who are most guilty of that are white people, because I don't think that they understand that concept of white privilege. Going full circle back to the original topic. Like, I don't think that white people are seeing, I just don't feel that they're seeing that there is a privilege there, that they have a privilege by not dealing with these bias right off the rip.
I don't think that people, it's not that they're saying like, because that's a weird implication on that one. And here's what I mean is like white people are supposed to be doing something about it. Like, I think the most white people that I know would just fall into like, I just treat people like people, and I'm not really like perpetuating like, well, hold on, white people go first. Like, I don't think people, any white person that I know, I don't know anybody who goes like, no, we definitely flex this privilege. Like, it's just like, if there's a dude in front of me, then he does his thing, then I do my thing. That's just a dude. Nobody goes like, oh shoot, black people are here. Like,
well, no, they do. That does happen, but that's a different subject all the way around.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's way more rare than like all white people say this. Like, that's just not. Most people just do their own damn thing.
Like, it's like, well, I still don't understand why you're like, it's like you're not acknowledging the thing that I've been saying since the beginning of this episode. You're not even, it's like you're like glazing over the fact that I've like the true point that you're trying to go off into the weeds about each and every one thing instead of just seeing the problem. Like, the problem is right there in front of you, and you just go like
the way you're describing it.
Okay,
it's not that I don't see it. I just don't agree with the way you're describing it. I don't agree with you. I don't think that it's as absolute as you're kind of making it out to be. I don't believe it's as big that direction. And in almost any position I've ever been in, any job I've ever been in, it's been a very mixed environment. And it's just not a thing where like the guy who's working next to me is like, oh, a black guy. Like, it's just, no, it's, Dorian's working next to me and I like him. Like, there's no like, oh, my boss he lets the white people go to lunch first. Like,
I never said that. I never said that. Like once again, you just made something. You just completely made something up. You just completely made it up. No. Yeah, everything you said was 100% against what I said. 100%. Everything.
I'm disagreeing with you.
No. Everything you just said was you drawing justifications, and it meant absolutely nothing to what I said. Like, you just
justification. I didn't say things are okay that I do this thing. I'm not justifying.
No. What you did was you completely took what I said and you just made up some false narrative and just said a bunch of stuff that just, you might as well have just said blah 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 blah, and because it meant nothing. Like, what I said was nobody said that white people get to go to lunch first. Nobody said that white people gain something by being white. Nobody said that white people are they're not getting extra snacks at lunch. They're not getting more money. They're not getting extra anything. That's not what white privilege is. This is what I've been trying to say the whole time. They're getting none of those things. Nobody said they are. So let's never say that again, because I didn't say that. That is what I meant. That is not what I said. That is not what I perceived. Nothing. What I said is that white people do not get a negative connotation for being white. Period. They don't get anything extra.
What I said is most white people don't give black people a negative consequence for being black. Most people don't care.
All of those things, all those examples I said, they didn't mean anything. They weren't examples. Those aren't things that are happening.
But that's not most people. It's not like if there's the people that you're saying, these are people who are in some sort of in authority, except for the penis thing. like people who have something to lose or have an authority over. So a person who owns a store has an invested interest to go off of whatever the statistics are of who's most likely to cause problems. Could be middle-aged white women. It could be an angry thug that walks in the door. Who knows what the stereotypes are? Those are preconceived stereotypes where they know I need to worry about these more than others. That's just stereotypes and how that works. And we've already explained, like white women steal more than black people do as far as the numbers go or whatever it would be. So they should be worried. Like, I'm going to watch these people. They should be always watching, but they can't really do anything about it. But we've both seen true stealing crime going. So there's preconceived stereotypes that people have based on experiences. That's not a fucking privilege. That's just, I've seen this shit. And so to try to go the other way with it and say like there is you have a fucking privilege by people not giving you shit. There's the stereotypes that exist. They exist, and stop pretending like they don't exist. Like, it's not like if it really was a world where there's no crime being done and nobody does bad things and the stereotypes are just totally perpetuated based on make-believe nonsense, then I would be fully with you on this one, 100%. And I can use your 100% things and we can go absolutely. But most people, most white people, not the fucking French people or the people who do have an authority to do bullshit, aren't doing these things. Most are not. And so there is a majority, let's even say 70%, are like, if there's a black guy near me, it's just a black guy near me. I don't give a shit. If there's somebody in line, somebody's in line. I don't care. There's no judgments like that. Now, are there still judgments? There are people who do it. Are there shitty people in everything? Fuck yes, there are. There's shitty people everywhere, but there's also good people everywhere.
I agree. I agree. Once again, and but this is what I'm saying. I'm saying that me, myself, have been guilty of these things. And I am trying to get people to check that, to check the fact that they have these things. And these things are not positive. I understand stereotypes. I understand all of these things. I understand stereotypes that have basis in truth. I get all of these things. That still doesn't change the fact. Guess what? The stereotypes that I had in my head didn't add up when I put them to the test. They did not. In any facet, in any group, they didn't add up. But I realized that I was being biased and things were taking place around me, and I was allowing things to happen around me because I was complacent about these biased. Because part of me agreed with them. But when I checked myself and put them to view and actually like looked at them in depth, I was wrong. And if me, somebody who is Lebanese, African American, Irish, English, French, Native American, like I have all of these things in me to some degree. And if I can be biased against groups of my own, like, then anybody can do it. It can happen. And I think that everybody's so busy saying, well, there's just bad people. Well, why does it only work in the aspect where it's them? It never works in the aspect that you're one of those people, that are doing these things that aren't good. And when we start checking our own shit, we can come out with a better result. That is the point. It is not any one of these things. It is all of these things on a whole that creates the problem.
Which, that's good. And I like what you said. And I agree with what you said there. But when you take all of the problems and throw them up in the air and go, look, all the problems, there will never, ever be a change or a solution.
Well, that is the solution. The solution is the solution is
tell people think different and have different experiences.
No. The solution is to check your shit. That's the solution.
I agree with the check your shit part. I agree, and I believe I believe people can choose Like this, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give it a chance. Like I think that if you look at these things, there are things that need to be practically put into place. And I think that the solutions aren't just change the way you look at everybody. There are experiences that have to happen to make you change your mind. So if you thought all white people are assholes, and then you hung out with some white people and they're like, hey, we'd have your back whenever. You're like, this is messing up my narrative. Like, that's how it changes, is going against the stereotype that you understand, which I agree with you. Exposure does those things. Taking a leap of faith does those things. Sure. And then sometimes people do, and it blows up in their fucking face, and they'll meet a person who like really is the stereotype. And you're like, see, fucking, I knew it.
Right.
And then the answer then would be not only to be more open and unbiased, but stop fucking doing the things that make people bias. Like, that should be a cultural thing. No different than if there was a Nazi KKK dude, most white people that I know would be like, not fucking cool, dude, because our own race is saying that's too fucking far. Stop that shit. There should be a cultural shift for us to look out for each other. But that goes for all these different areas. And that's where you get into class conversation and shit like that. Because
right.
Like you said, going to a trailer park is going to be a very different perspective than going into mansions and shit. It's just because they're all white people there doesn't mean it's the same thing.
Right.
It's not.
Right.
And so if you look at even the resume thing from now on, the HR's got to use a team of people that are totally okay with diversity. And so you can't have that fucking asshole who's like, LaFonda, nope. Lagonda, more like it. You know, like you can't have that shit. You can't have somebody doing nonsense because the committee is like, look at these resumes the right way, and this kid actually stacks up. I don't care what his name is. Like, you have to be able to just find the solutions that make it so those things like it doesn't operate that way. But that's fairness for everybody. Well, yeah. And so anybody who's trying to fight fairness would be the enemy of all. And so that's where we as people, yes, changing the biases, but that goes with experiences and opening up to new experiences. But it also goes on the other end to not perpetuate the biases people have against you. All
right. Well, okay. I can agree with not perpetuating the biases that you have, that like if there is a bias against a particular culture, like Asian men, I think all the ones with huge Wang should show them out, show everybody like, hey, look, we're rocking on this side. Hey, that shit ain't true.
You want to see how small this Asian penis is?
Right. So
check this out.
It was the look on your face when you did that. Oh, that was great.
You get extra Asian.
That's fucked up.
My Chinese show on that one.
Oh man, like like I get not perpetuating that, but where we were talking, right, was the simple fact of it's still I feel like that we're not paying attention to where because the conversation starts on white privilege. And I'm really asking you this because I'm really curious. After everything that we've said and everything we've gone, you don't see the absence of nothing, just the nothingness of it all as being a privilege to white people.
If it is an advantage, like let's just try and say, okay, there is an advantage to it, and I believe the advantages do go on stereotypes. That's what I believe. Like, if there is this thing that's going on, the advantage goes on the stereotypes that are with white people are different than the stereotypes with black people. That's
I agree.
Where people are getting their information from.
I agree.
And before they make a judgment or they make an action against somebody. And so with that, the idea of a privilege means that it's something that other people want too. I would assume so, right? In order to say we no longer have a privilege, it's because we all get a fair shake at it.
Right. What everybody would want. It's not that they want the privilege. It's that they don't want there to be a privilege. It's the absence of a privilege is what everybody wants, because that the absence of that privilege is just equality. That is the absence of that privilege. So with that being said, like I do understand about the stereotypes and how that plays into the whole thing. But now let me ask you this. If we can't agree that is a privilege, and even if I do concede the fact that it is based on stereotypes, right? Okay, but now if you take that, and let me ask you this, if you take that and you extrapolate that over 200 years, hang on. And mind you, it is a lot better now than it used to be. So there's no argument there. I totally agree. It is a million times better than it was 200 years ago. Like, you know what I mean? And I will argue with anybody, I don't care who they are, that it has gotten better. I mean, it has taken some dips here and there, this and that, but I don't think anybody with any kind of sense can argue that it is better every decade than it was the decade before, period. Like every single decade has been better than the previous. So I think we can all agree with that. But what kind of negative things come with it after 200 years of it? Even if it's gotten better, how many opportunities were lost? How much does it change a group of people? How much does it change a group of people? So the question comes, it's the chicken and the egg conversation, right? So is it that, like, let's take a lot of the black stereotypes. Let's take a lot of those, right? Is it that black people are those things, or were those things created because of all of the 200 years of shit? Did they become that way because of those horrible things? Is that where the stereotypes came from?
I would, as far as the 200 years thing, I would take it, if we're going to be a little more realistic, it's got to be within like a lifetime. Let's even just say like from the 50s forward, because there was still blatant ass racism still then. Like it was still segregated, and it was very, because I mean, like the 200 years, yes, we can get into your culture is gone. Yes, we can get into there's been a disassimilation of education to make sure you can't rise up. Yes, there were those things. And we'd have to go into this lifetime of people who are like, they fought through those things to the point where now we have generations who have never known those things. And so there is a carryover. Yes.
Okay,
Am I going to say no? Yes, there is a carryover. Then it does turn into, there is a massive difference, massive, even 100 years ago to today is not even the same. It's not the same conversation even, because there were actual rights you didn't have. Well, now you do have all the rights. Like those are there now. And so then it turns into like, what would you do if you had freedom? What would you do if you had the ability to not be held back? Now it changes the conversation to say there is no law that says you're not allowed. Now you're actually put up into the front of the line now, because that was fucked up and people are trying to make it go better. It doesn't happen overnight, but there's effort. And it's like you said, every decade, especially since the 70s, has gotten better. Every decade has gotten better.
Absolutely.
Is everything perfect? No, it will take time. And yes, there's some fucked up shit that's happened between there. You know, like, yes, there's a lot of really messed up things that are done wrong. But by looking at the things, then it turns into, did we learn from this and how can we make it better? Obviously, you see people now say scrap the whole system and defund everybody and screw this and let's start over. Like, no, some of these things were just, there was a good idea done fucked up.
Yeah.
Some of these things were, this should have gone well, and the people who did it, they did it in a weird way, and it made the whole thing turn upside down.
You know, that reminds me of like the whole thing of, did you know, like, and here's a little, this is a total just bullshit fact that just to put out there. Did you know that domestic cats, house cats, are not native to Australia? Did you know that?
No.
And what's crazy is they had a problem there in Australia. So the solution, they had a rodent problem there. So their solution was, let's take a bunch of standard cats and release them into the outback in Australia. Great idea. It got rid of the rodent problem. However, the country is now plagued with feral cats that are like deadly in some cases because of like bacteria in their nails, and they like wiped out whole species and all kinds of like crazy shit. Good idea, but nobody thought about all of the steps that would come from it. You do an action, and on the face of it, it was done with a good intention. Like, it was done for a good reason. There was a problem. They're like, hey, rather than doing a bunch of pesticides and killing things and doing all this and that, we're just going to add a new predator into the ecosystem that is going to fix this problem. And then at the end of the day, what do you got? You got a bunch of fucking house cats. And just as an FYI, this is what made me bring this up.
Dude, watch out.
Who doesn't love? Oh, where is my? Oh, there it is. Who doesn't love house cats? Look at that guy right there.
You have to be careful. Those are feral.
Look at that. But I mean, so at the end of the day, all you got is a bunch of house cats, right? You're just like, oh, I got a house cat. So that's great. Who can lose a house cat, right? But these cats, like, you can watch documentaries on them, these cats are insane. They're mean and terrible. Like, you can't touch them. You can't do a shit with them. So the whole thing is, and that's where what brought that up. Well, not only the fact that my cat's like sleeping upside down right now, which is so cute, super funny. But anyways, I think that a lot of things that took place in that time period, like from the 20s until like the 70s, right? There was a lot of things that were put in place and done with the best of intentions, but just nobody thought about. They're like, okay, step one, let's fix this problem, and we're going to fix it with this thing here. And as soon as we do that, everything will be, but nobody got to thinking about what the repercussions of doing those things were going to do. And it created a lot of problems. And it also created, in my opinion, it created a lot of the stereotypes. It was a byproduct of things they were trying to do to fix these problems. And I think that a lot of people, and I think a lot of the narrative right now, it's really, people go into the whole thing of all of these bad things. And I think they look at, you see the argument about like the right side using on the Dems right currently, like that, they're trying to keep you in poverty so you're compliant and all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? This is some of the narrative that's going on. And I don't think anybody wants that. Not really. I think that these are byproducts of people that tried to do good things, and then shitty things came out of it, and it was just unintended consequences.
There are some things, yes. Some things that were.
Well, yeah, of course. Listen. I mean, there was
the welfare system and stuff like that was designed to hold people down.
Well, I mean, of course, there are a lot of things that were bad. You know what I mean? Like
something that I would argue though, and this is where I would go, and this would be like, again, I come from no means. Like the stuff that I've built and the stuff I'm building and the things that you've built and the things that you're building, the stuff that we've done, we didn't come from means. And I can't say that all the stuff I've done has anything to do with my skin color. It comes from just fucking raw, hard ass work. And I do know a lot of black people who just will fucking put in the work. Like, in fact, a couple of people who I'm prospecting for our next people that we're hiring, like, I just met them, like, dude, you're just a hard ass worker, and I like it. I'd love to have you work for me. This is nothing to do with the color of the skin. It's just their raw character and work ethic. And I just have a hard time seeing, like, where was I going with that? Because I knocked myself into the weeds for real.
That's great. It's good. I'm glad it happened to you instead of me this time. That's absolutely perfect. You're just trying to justify like how people get hired and why they get hired. That it's not just based off of like I said, we were talking about unintended consequences and how stereotypes came to be, and then you're talking about hiring people because they're hard work.
Yeah, and well, I mean, and there are things too that are real, and this is where I think that one thing, for example, like if I have the choice and I know that my heritage and my people were held back from certain things,
right?
And probably the number one thing that I would say, there's two big ones that I would put into my like controllables. The two big ones that I know that they did to try to fuck me over. Like, I know they did this thing to fuck me up. The first thing, don't teach black people to read. Reading will make you a threat. Reading will make you powerful. Reading will make it so you understand more. Reading will give you opportunity. Reading is a problem.
I agree with
And
that.
I watched videos of a guy who's in his 80s as a black man. He's like, I read every single day because people had to die, like not just get hurt, died for us to have the right to read.
Right.
Like people would secretly teach like their slaves to read because they knew the value in that. They would teach people illegally because it was illegal to teach black people to read.
Right.
People had to fight and die for that right. And so as a culture, it doesn't make sense from me, from my perspective, to say they used to try to stop us from reading and every damn kid in my house is going to have 100 books. Like we're going to read books all day. That's what we're going to do because I need you to grow your brain. It's the one thing they try to stop you on. And you can control this.
Right.
That one is a huge one.
Right.
The other one is dad's not being in the home. Like that's a controllable. There's no official who shows up to say dad's got to get the fuck out.
Right.
That's a controllable.
Right.
You have to be there for your kids. It may not be a glorious, perfect thing, but show the fuck up for your kids. That's a controllable that they did to make you messed up. Welfare was designed to say dad can't be there for you to get this money.
Right.
That was designed on purpose to break down the family. If you know they don't want you to read and they don't want you to be there for your kids, it's the two things that I would break the stereotype as hard as I possibly could. I would be there for my kids all the time and I would make them read.
Well, I want to say that, like, I mean, statistically speaking, those numbers are improving. You know what I mean? Like those numbers are improving. Like they absolutely, like, I think they were at their worst in like the 90s. You know what I mean? Like that's when it was at the...
Not the dad part. And right now, like I'll have to send them to you because like there's a lot of numbers that get thrown around for it. So I'll look them up and send them to you because like the fathers not being in the house thing for black families is over 75% right now. That's the only
I can honestly say I don't know. I haven't personally looked into that statistic at the moment.
Yeah, I just saw it like recently. I think it's higher than that now, and that's where it's getting kind of crazy. Is there's like I think the next group is like in the high 20s. Like it's not even a close game on that one, and they're like we've never seen anything like it.
Right,
it's a big problem.
Okay, but then you still have to acknowledge, like, once again, this comes down to these come down to stereotypes, and then in some cases, once again, factual statistics, right? But if we're going to acknowledge that, we also have to acknowledge how it happened. So if it happened there, but now, so and it's not just acknowledging how it happened. It's like how do you undo something that was intentionally done on an individual level? I think that's something that it's something that you can control, right? I think that's something like if somebody is like, if there's a speaking of black people, black men in general, right? If there's an 18 or, mid-teens to early 20s young black guy that's like, that doesn't have any kids yet and this and that, and he hears this message and he's like, that makes sense. That really makes sense. That really is something that I can control. That's something, and I think that's great. And hopefully somebody listening to this, hopefully that does do that for somebody. But how do you fix a problem if those numbers, like I said, because I haven't looked at those numbers, so I can't say for sure. But if those numbers are correct, you know what I mean? Then how do you fix that now for all of the millions of households that it's already affecting? That it's been grown up and it's already something that's a real thing. How do you address that? How is this something? And this is where I think that this is super important. You know what I mean? And these are the kind of conversations that I really want to have. Like, what is the solution? How do we as a society? Because I think this is a societal created problem. I think we can all agree that it was created. It was our system that created this problem. Even if it doesn't exist today, it's our system created the dynamics. They created the break, right? So I think that is something that as a society, it's something that we need to address. So if it's something, what is a solution? What is a way to get through that and work into that problem.
Well, we have to create the family values to get back to what they're supposed to be again. And in that community, and here's the thing with it is, as Americans, the thing that we can fight for is to break the rules, because there's rules in place that do separate the family. There's rules there, and that obviously needs to be broken. And like you talked about the UBI, and you talked about things where like there has to be a different way to support families that doesn't require rules that you're held back or you can't dream or you can't move forward because you're restricted.
Right.
And you know that if you do go and do work, you'll probably make less money than if you just didn't have your man in the house. Like,
right.
the rules have to be broken as the system itself. If there is a system, and it's not that welfare and stuff isn't just against black people, but it's affecting them heavily.
Right.
You know, and so with that has to be a different system. We have to figure out a different way that there's help or money done that doesn't discourage families being together, and it needs to encourage families to be together. Now, as far as the community itself, for the black community, there is no great white hope that's going to come in and tell black dads to start being dads. Like, that's just not,
right.
Just not going to think. I can't go like, yo, black people, the white guy said to do this. Like, they're going to be like, we're not listening to that. But it has to come from inside. That has to be an internal fix where there does have to be that, like, it is actually badass to be a father. It is badass, and you need to be there for the kids. Like, that the whole shift needs to change. And I think that it will when we lift the restrictions for it. Well, and I think that's where the goals would have to be.
And just be clear, like the restriction that we're talking about, because that the restriction about the welfare, that doesn't really apply anymore. They already removed that. Like, there's not there's not a thing that's saying that the fathers can't be in the home if you're collecting welfare.
But there was, and you were saying,
right, there was.
Does it carry over?
Right, but
since the
now,
70s to now, yeah, that mattered.
Right, of course, right. So they got rid of a lot of stuff like that. So that is very true. But and there is a lot of lingering effects. But we were talking about more about things that adversely affect now. Like, for example, if somebody is, let's take the unemployment system, right? So currently, if you are on unemployment in the state of Michigan and you collect unemployment for whatever reason, because you lost your job, because of whatever, and if you do something as simple as, one of the questions they ask you every couple of weeks is, what did you start school in the last 2 weeks? Did you go back to school? Like, and if you say, yes, I'm going back to school to better myself, to become something more, we're like, oh, well, then your unemployment's cut off. And how does that make sense? If somebody lost their job to the point where if you lost your job and you're collecting unemployment, that means that you paid enough money into the system to qualify, and you lost your job for a qualifying reason that we say as a society, if you lost your job because of this, that's not your fault, and we will help you till you get back on your feet. And then if somebody then turns around and says, hey, well, I'm going to school to better myself, to do something better, how do we expect people who are in bad situations, impoverished, and once again, this is something that hard hits the black community, right? Like, if they want to do something to be better, to be more than they were, we're going to take away their livelihood for doing that. And these are things like we should be championing. This goes back to our last conversation about education, right? That's just a little piece of it. But I really feel that all of this, all this comes from like education. And I feel as far as it comes back to rebuilding the community, this goes back into that reparations conversation that I had just a couple weeks back about how to make an active change. Like, all these things are like, I said the education thing, that's the long game. That's looking at everything through the lens of, in 50 years, this is going to fix the problem. But looking at things in the short term, that's where the reparations conversation comes in. That's where things like that, I think things that we have to do on the ground level and this isn't, and be very clear that that's not, these things aren't about just making things better for people of color. All of these things are going to be better for people, just impoverished people. And just unfortunately, right now in our country, the people of color are the ones as a culture who are being affected the hardest. So it just becomes it is what it is. And we just have to come up with better ways. And also, let me say this, no matter what system we come up with, we always have to understand that there's always going to be people that are going to juke the system. No matter what we do, somebody is going to figure out a loophole and a way to, this comes along with that whole narrative that people are sitting on like welfare and just doing nothing. And they're just mooching off of the system, which is crazy. It's crazy to say that, because if you look at things like the welfare system and you look at the actual numbers, the largest contribution to welfare, what is considered under the welfare system, is Social Security. And that's where most of the money comes from. That's where most of the money is going. And who wants to see grandma lose her Social Security? I don't. You know what I mean? I'm not into that. Like, I don't want to live in a world where grandma can't afford her medicine and is starving, like, or living in a homeless shelter. I'm not really into that. So I think as a country, we make too much money for those kind of things. I think that's just crazy. But then if we look at the people who are actually receiving like food assistance or cash assistance or whatever, so what we consider the negative portions of welfare, it's like 2.5% of our GDP. If we stopped giving it out, it would change nothing. It's not enough money to change as far as a GDP goes. It would change nothing. So it's inconsequential. So the amount of people who are receiving it, let's say even 20% of those people are receiving it for what most people consider bullshit or somebody juking the system, which it's not even that high as 20%, but let's just say it was. It's like, that would be like what? 20% of 1% of our total GP.
I have no idea what the number would be.
Yeah. I mean, but
I'm sure it's different than that, but I don't know.
But I mean, it's something similar to that, but it's something very close to that. It would do nothing. It would change nothing if all those people who are juking the system, and that's where I was coming back to it, that the people who are juking the system and just taking that shouldn't be taking, if they weren't taking, it wouldn't build us 2 new jets. Not 2. Like, it wouldn't build our military 2 new jets. Like, that's how inconsequential it is. As far as a government is concerned, as far as how much money our government takes in and spends every year, it's just nothing. So, like, we're looking at all of these things, and we're making all of these preconceived notions about what needs to happen. And we really need to do something to work out a solution. And like I was saying, I don't have an answer. I don't know what the right way. I got a lot of ideas for how to fix the long game, how to fix it over time. But what do we do to fix, we say that the fathers in the home, the reading, this and that. Like, what do you do with you? Like, if we decide to change the schools next year and say, okay, well, the schools starting in 2021 are all going to be at this standard, and everybody's going to have all the resources and the music and the extracurriculars and the tutoring and the blah, 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 whatever. And everything's going to be great. Well, every kid that grew up with that, starting in the first grade, you fast forward 12 years, and every kid will they will have great literacy. They will have great opportunity. They will just be different. They will think different. What do we do with the 200 million people in the United States right now? Or the 80 million people of color, you know what I mean? Whatever the number is, I don't know off the top of my head. But what do we do with the ones that are currently feeling the backlash from the last 30 years, 50 years? What do we do? What do we do with them? What do we do with the people that are still, because I mean, there are still people alive today who went to a beach. That one guy you sent me the thing. There's still guys that went to a beach and said, no Jews, no dogs, no coloreds on Miami Beach when they were a kid. You know what I mean? Like, what do we do? What do we do to fix these problems that have been built for the last 50 years? And, with that, I mean, like, we're at an hour 33. I think that's our magic hour.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got a bunch of notes I was writing down on this thing. So, here's what I kind of, let me just recap what you said.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as white privilege, and we should use the N-word too.
Wow. 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 All right.
Did I get it right? Did I get it right?
Thanks for getting me kicked off of YouTube, Rick. I appreciate that's perfect.
Ridiculous. All right. No, I think that there's some funny stuff. I think that there's a few things as far as getting into the answers on some of these things. It's obviously just the conversation's a little more complicated than just you are privileged, you are not privileged. I believe that it's a little more complicated than just as blanket as we make it. I believe there are things that do have advantages. I believe there's things that are disadvantages. I believe also it's on both sides. I think that some of the things can be argued as far as athleticism, as far as raw strength goes for, black people they're freaking talented at sports. They just are. Like there's advantages. They get to use the N-word. That's an advantage. And then I would still argue big black PP is still an advantage. I'm just putting it on there. Just saying. So there are some. I mean, am I saying it supersedes some of the crazy stuff? I think that there's solutions that we have to do societally as just people. I believe that you're right as far as fighting the biases that we have. But I am still a big perpetuate of making the choices to go against the stereotypes that you believe are holding you back, and so those are real things that I think that those are controllables. And that's the thing, that if there is a thing that says like black people are always late, if there's black people time, if there's a thing, man, you fight your ass off to not be that thing. Like if there are things that say like black people do this or white people do this, and it's a negative that works against you, you work your ass off to be not that. That's what I think would be the thing to make it so everybody is working together in one giant group. It's a conglomerate now that it's just people, because people are actively trying to go against the things that hold them back. That's my perspective on it. I hope that maybe somebody would go like, my excuses don't supersede my options. Because if you go like, no, you don't understand, I got to do it this way. Like, I do not agree. You do get to choose whether you treat somebody poorly or you treat somebody well. You get to decide. There's no excuse otherwise.
Right.
And so I would say that to break what would be considered a privilege, I would say that has to come with changing the stereotypes or changing the choices that are made. Are there still bad apples? Fuck yes, there are. And that comes into accountability to make it so bad apples can't just get away with shit. That's the balance. It's the only way that it can move forward is when people are just people and everyone's doing their best. That's just it. And if you're not, and you're trying to go against that in any way, you are going to create a stereotype to make people say, whenever I deal with you, this is my problem.
All right.
That's just where I stick on it. And so
I think that once again, I think that we actually came to a point of like, at least some level of mutual agreement. We definitely don't agree on everything, but I also want to put out there that once again, it's the whole point to this is to have these conversations, is to try to come to some kind of sensible conclusion that doesn't end us both with going fuck you. Like, and if we can start there, I think we'll all be doing ourselves a service and the people around us. So I would say, in conclusion to all of this is check your own bias, check your shit. Like, I think that's super important. Check your shit, know what's going on, know how you're feeling, know why you're feeling the way you're feeling. And it's okay to feel what you're feeling. It's okay to be aware, but it's not okay to judge. It's not okay to throw those judgments before you have a chance to truly feel a situation. And I think that if we all just take a little bit of time, we all just step outside of our own box just a little bit and try to find, once again, common ground, find a fucking common ground. This ain't that fucking hard. Like this guy right here, me and him, we definitely don't see eye to eye. And I think that's pretty obvious. Like on a lot of subjects, me and him are pretty much coming from opposite ends. But that's okay. It's okay at the end of the day for us to disagree and don't think that he's out to get me because his views are different than mine, and vice versa. I just think that it's just differing opinions. And the less we're trying as people to try to get everybody to agree with how they feel, and just being okay with everybody feeling how they feel, I think we'll be doing a lot better if we get there first. You agree?
Yeah, I like it, dude. I got 2 things for that. That was great, by the way. Nice monologue.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Go check out this thing. This is a book that I wrote.
Yeah.
And when you say get rid of your biases and stop doing judgments, there is an entire chapter called The Golden Rule, which it gets into if you're going to make choices on how you're going to treat other people, the way you can tell right and wrong is if you're going to do something that you would really not like done to you.
Yep.
It's an easy way to look in the mirror. If I said, I'm going to, if someone looked at my resume and said, because of my name, I wouldn't even look at that person. Would you like to be treated that way? You go, well, that's not very cool. Then don't do shit like that.
Right.
You know, it's if you're gonna say like, hey, hey, I'm gonna be in a situation, and I'm gonna be rude to them. Well, would you like somebody being rude to you? I would not like that.
Right.
Then don't do that shit.
Right.
Like it gets really, really simple when we start getting into it, and it clears up a lot of the nonsense that we do. So check out my book, and you can tell me like this guy's really great, or I think you're an idiot. Either way, I don't care. Everything's a choice. So it's on Amazon. Check it out. Read it for yourself. You can also get it on my website at justamileaday.com. So I say check it out. But yeah, I think good job, dude. Oh, one more thing I wanted to say. You know how you said like when I ending this was saying fuck you?
Yeah.
Like fuck you. I think we can make it a funny thing where I love you, dude, and we just say fuck you at the end, but that means I love you.
Oh, all right.
How funny is that? Like, all right, hey, fuck you, dude.
All right, fair enough.
And like we end every single video with fuck you.
All right, fair. Okay, fair enough.
I'm just being silly. We don't really have to, but I'm kind of game if you do.
No. 1, 2, 3.
Hey, fuck you.
Fuck
dude.
you. I'm out.